Welcome to Backyards and Bevvies. Grab your favorite bevy, pull up a chair, and enjoy the ride. Hey, B&B fam. This podcast is sponsored to you by BetterHelp, H-E-L-P. Is there something getting in the way of your happiness? I know when I traveled the world, I had many days where BetterHelp's worldwide service of licensed professional therapists could have helped me speak to someone no matter where I was in the world about whatever was happening with my life, and with zero judgment. With their ability to match me with a therapist that best fits me, I know my mental health would have been way better back then. Believe me, I needed it. But I'm here to share a way for you to take back control of your mental health by telling you about BetterHelp's awesome services they have for you to talk with a pro about your life through their app or just online. Whether it is a video session or some simple messaging, their team is here to help. I went to check out the app for myself just to see how easy it was to use, and after a series of questions, I was told I would be able to start matching with a therapist in under 48 hours. And what is super rad is that it's affordable and they even offer financial aid too. So come join the 2 million users that have already been helped and gain back control of your mental health by visiting betterhelp.com/backyards for 10% off your first month. Remember, BetterHelp is therapy done securely online. Don't forget to use the special code BACKYARDS and let BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, help you to start living a happier life today.
It like startled me.
Welcome to the last installment of Kitchens and Bevvies.
Yes.
We're only in the kitchen today because you had asked me, like, hey, is there
still pretty cold
really
out.
any way we can do this? And I said, I do sleep next to you,
You
and there
took pity
are
on me.
sharp objects in this house. So I said, yeah, fine. If it was up to me, we'd be outside in the...
I'm glad we're inside and it's warm.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It brings... You know what I think it does is it brings a little bit of excitement out there. Like, this is exciting, but I don't know, being in a little chilly environment kind of makes you...
Sure. Maybe for you. For me, it makes me kind of like shrink back into my turtle shell and not want to come out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure some of the people that do watch it on YouTube at times are like, oh, what a jerk for making
like
her
that
sit
poor
out
girl
there. Yeah,
looks
like,
frozen.
She's dying, and that guy's just loving it over there. But we just want to say, welcome for your midweek treat, a little laughter and life lessons, brought to you by BK and PK.
Whoop, whoop.
But we want to really say thank you. We've been doing this 4-part series, which we started 4 weeks ago, and it's all about this journey that, well, it started with a question. You had actually gotten the question, not me, and then you posed the question to me. And so it kind of was supposed to be just a one-time thing, and then we were like, well, maybe 2 episodes, and then it turned into 3, and then there's just still so much to it that it's hard to tell. I think anybody would go through that same scenario. If you tell your life, or if you tell a portion of your life story, it's not going to be quick.
Yeah. Well, and a major portion because this was your career for 15 years. So
true, and it really did have a giant effect on what we're doing now. So to me,
absolutely,
telling the story is not just me telling a story because I want people to be like, oh, wow, that's such a cool life. He's so cool. The story is more. I think it's more of a growing. Any person can grow. Any person can do anything.
You can change.
You can change. And there's nothing wrong with change, especially if the change is for the better or you're sacrificing something for the better. But, people are always so scared to change that maybe this could be that catalyst where people have wanted to take that extra little leap or something into something that's dangerous. And dangerous in the sense that it's more dangerous to probably sit in something you hate than it is to move forward into something that is unknown. Yeah. It sounds dangerous, but in reality, what's the worst you're going to find? Something you like?
Maybe. Yeah.
So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen to a minute of this or all almost
4 hours
plus hours of this. So I can't say that this is going to be a short one today, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah. But we're definitely ending it today, no matter what.
Yes.
Because we got some really cool. I have 2 cool interviews I'm gonna drop coming up. So this is it for us. So So as we go
for
into
a minute, yeah,
for 2 weeks,
yes,
we'll give all the listeners a little break from us.
yes.
Okay, so
Well, before you get started,
Yeah.
I actually thought it would be a cool way to start this episode off. You know, people have heard all about you being the only fat person addicted to cocaine, and then you going to Full Sail and working with Kelly and getting rejected by Claire, and then you're getting hired by Claire. And before you jump into the Claire side of the story in a second, I thought it would be neat for people to hear. I mean, this will be a handful of names that I read off of this because your resume is long, but I just think it's really interesting to see what you actually accomplished in that career.
Oh.
And it's also interesting to look at from a perspective of what you walked away from. You know, I mean, like we were just saying, people change and, you know, you jumped into being a stay-at-home dad and doing the podcast and all the things. And I just think it's really interesting. You know, a lot of people would be like, how could you walk away from that?
Yeah.
So just a little sampling of the tours that PK did throughout his professional career. Let's see. Nelly, Maren Morris, Florida Georgia Line, Motley Crue, Alan Jackson, The Weeknd, Carrie Underwood, Tim McGraw, Blake Shelton, Sheryl Crow, Jay-Z, Justin Timberlake, Kanye West, Queen and Adam Lambert, Green Day, Guns N' Roses, Alicia Keys, Justin Bieber, Paul Simon, Nickelback, Luke Bryan, The Eagles, Garth Brooks, Dead and Company, Fleetwood Mac. And that is just a very small sample of some of the caliber of artists that you worked with, which is, I think, really impressive.
Huh. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Some of those too were full like, you know, 2 years tours, and others were a weekend, 2 weeks, stuff like that. But still, yeah, it was awesome to get a chance to be a part of productions. Some of those were multiples too. You know, like,
you toured with Carrie and Florida Georgia Line quite a few times.
Quite a few times, and I would always go back and do a couple Garth stuff because he had a solid crew already, and I would just be added in. But yeah, like some of those were. It always is interesting to look back on some of the shows. You know, it is always a pleasure or it's such an honor, I should say, that I got to be next to some of the greatest artists in the world. But then on top of it, I was with some of the greatest technicians in the world.
Absolutely.
You know,
you got to see some of the most incredible places.
Yeah, and that was I think the catalyst to me wanting to be on the road for so long, as I started to be around people that were just so insanely good at what they did, whether it be the Carps or whether it be the lighting team, whether video, I mean, you name it, pyro, catering. I mean, there was times that I toured where there was horrible departments, but it was so much less than what it was on the opposite. You know, like there were so many good people, and that was the hard part to walk away from. Though some of those artists will always mean something giant to me because of the way they interacted with me, or the way that from the smallest little details to some of the biggest things that some of them did for me over my career, that didn't really compare to some of the, I guess you could say, friendships that I still have. You know, there's guys that I talk to on a regular all the time because we're just close.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it is cool. And it is interesting when I hear those names.
Walk down memory lane.
It will, and that was, I think, one of those other things too. When I would get done touring, I'd be inundated by questions from people, and it was kind of like I was a little rock star, so I loved it even more because I always was like an attention grabber.
Yes.
So we can go down that a different day. But yeah, so Claire was the pinnacle. And when you look at touring and you look at people who started, let's say, in a local venue or local small audio shop or whatever, Claire is the pinnacle. Claire is getting to the big leagues. And so, because they only do the big tours.
Right.
I mean, they do small stuff, but your chances of going on something small compared to something big it's night and day.
Right, right.
As compared to like a small tour, a small audio shop that does smaller tours, you'll go do club gigs. But Claire was when I figured it out and I was like, okay, that's where I want to go, and then I got rejected. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And then I was talked into it by my old roommate Brace, and it was like, man, do I really want to go through this heartbreak again? And it was like, yeah, of course I do,
Like,
because
why not?
that's what if you're gonna win, you're gonna get your heart broken. I mean, you're gonna miss the shot, you're gonna miss a bunch of things, but then eventually
It's about what you do with yourself afterwards.
you learn. I think I mean, that's the only thing you can do. You go out there, you pick up, like, using Michael Jordan as an example. He always used that phrase that he would freaking miss whatever 90% of the shots, but all that matters is making that one when it means to make that one. But to make that one, you have to practice, and you have to do the things, you have to put in the work. And so getting to Clair was that. And when they rejected me the first time, it hurt, and I was mad, but then I was like, okay, well, I will just be better. And I won't go to Clair.
I'll show them.
I'll be the best local audio guy in the world, which no one will know because I'm local. So I applied again. I went through the interview process. I did the thing with Dave over the phone, and yeah, they gave me like 1 day or 2 days, and then I was like hired.
Crazy.
And I said my goodbyes. I talked about that on the last podcast, said my goodbyes, and I put everything in my Ford Ranger, and I headed to Little Lidditz, Pennsylvania. Yeah, so went from the Southwest to middle of Texas, because Texas is its own country. So, you'd like
True.
different time zones in this state. Then I went to the Panhandle, or I went all the way into the Florida. I was going to call it the Wang.
The boot. The Wang. No. No, sir.
Of America.
No, sir.
Yeah, that was a bad joke.
That was a bad joke. Rewind.
And then it was like, okay, I've never heard of Lidditz, Pennsylvania, other than, seeing it on road cases and stuff. And
I'd never heard of it.
Tiny. I think when I moved there might have been 10,000 people in the city. Little. And the cool thing about Clair, and short history, it's been around for over 50 years now. It started with two brothers that were literally had a PA system because they wanted to put on, I think it was like 4th of July and Easter egg hunts in the park. And that was it. And then the Four Seasons came in, and I can't remember if their PA didn't make it or it blew up, but they were just down the street, either in York or maybe Lancaster. Needed gear. And they were like, the Clair brothers were like, yeah, we got you. And then they did such a good job that they were like, why don't you come on tour with us? And then after that,
the rest is history. It's incredible. And now it's the largest
worldwide
audio company in the world. It's incredible.
You can go prep in shops in LA. It used to be a few more in the States, but I think since now it's kind of, the whole structure is a little different. But it used to be, when I first started, it was like LA, Chicago, Lidditz. Then there was
Nashville.
Yeah. And then it was Switzerland was one.
Yeah.
And
there's one in Mexico now, right? Didn't somebody tell us that the other day?
If there isn't yet, it's probably, they're probably hatching it up and thinking about it.
It's amazing.
And then there's Jan's down in Australia. I mean, it's a worldwide company, and they did it not because of global take. They didn't want to like own the world of every speaker.
It's better to have gear over there than to have to freight it over there.
That's the whole idea. And so working with the caliber of company like Clair, you're in a different ballgame. You're not walking into, it's not the amateurs,
Right.
There is stuff.
Well, their reach is so massive. They just have so much more at their disposal, being a company that size.
Well, and their clientele is just so much different too, and expects so much, bigger of a, I don't even know the word, but bigger, be better.
Yeah.
Be better, I think is the best way to put it. And so, you look at some of these, some of their clients, I mean, the U2 has been with them since like day one.
Wow.
40 years now or something like that, 30 years.
Wild.
I mean, it's incredible. And so things like that started to creep into my head as I'm driving up there, because it's like, oh my gosh, maybe I was the big fish in Orlando, or I was starting to become someone down there because of just the people I was working with. And so it was easy to like have a really good reputation already.
Right.
Then
Now
Here.
you're going somewhere you don't know anybody.
Oh, it was my life all over again. Just like I had like cut it and pasted a few times, and here I was again driving north, not knowing anyone at the shop. Like, sure, I knew a couple people who had worked for Claire and made friends like that, but I didn't really know anyone.
Yeah.
Except my roommate. He ended up my student that saw me on the way out of the interview. He ended up getting hired too.
Oh, cool.
So
you didn't totally ruin it for him.
So I didn't ruin it for him. Actually,
thank goodness.
I think when I started that class, because this is the crazy part too, even though I had gone through Full Sail and I'd worked in all these businesses and I had mixed and all these things, going to Claire, you have to go back to roadie school.
Oh.
So it's
that's cool that they actually have something like that.
Yeah, and it started with, I think they might have had a small program, but Showco, when they acquired Showco, Showco had an RIT, which is like roadie in training.
Okay.
RIT, yeah. Program, and
basically teaching you how to apply what you may have learned in school in a real situation.
I would almost say it's more like,
or even if you didn't go to school,
it's more like, cool, you have this knowledge, we're going to erase it. It's like Men in Black.
Start you over.
Yeah, because they don't want you to do it your way. It's like a pilot
their way.
Mechanic, you know, the pilot mechanic. I feel they're not taught to memorize the book. They're taught to learn how to read the book and then apply that knowledge with each step. And that's kind of what Claire is. You know, we don't pull out a book every day, but they want you to fly their PA their way. They want you to, you know, put the speaker cables and, you know, all these things in line their way. Because
try and keep it streamlined so that it's done the same by everybody.
I mean, imagine if you went in there and you said, well, I'm gonna do it this way because this is the way I've always done it. And they're like, okay, but now we have to replace you because you got sick on tour. Maybe you have to go home.
Know how to do that? Yeah.
So if they had to replace you, which was very easy because they had such a giant reach that in a moment's notice they could be flying someone from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world, in the hopes that your stuff looks exactly like it, and this person would be able to just swing
pick up and carry it from right where you left off.
Yeah, because no tour is going to slow down for a small PA tech coming in that needs to wait. I don't know how to do that.
Well, you better figure it out.
You better figure it out. And that's part of that training. And so you move up to Lidditz. Some companies have different internship-ish style things, but Claire, they actually give you a job. You come into the warehouse, and you literally start in the cable department, and you just start learning cables. Even though you might know some of the cables, you start learning their cables. And it was interesting. It was like I was taking another giant pay cut, you know, leaving Hooters and all that, even though I was broke and, and fat. I still was going to a place where wasn't making any money at first, right? So here at Claire, I was going from actually making a decent wage because I was teaching. I was also working for Kelly. I was working at Hard Rock. I was mixing on the side. So I was like,
you're making good money.
Yeah, I was making pretty decent money. And that was another sacrifice. It was like, wow, well, here we go. So me and Tim became roommates because it split our bills. And then you have to work in the shop while you go through this training. And let's just say it was like $10 an hour. You know, might have been $1 or less more, whatever. But
minimum wage back then.
Actually, I think it was a little bit above.
A little bit more minimum wage,
But it's enough to live, and it's enough to basically get you.
And you were in a tiny town with like nothing going on.
Oh no, there's plenty going on.
Like there was one bar.
I think when I was there was 3 that we frequented, and we had some pretty wild times.
You spent all the money.
I learned how to drink on a budget. I'll tell you that much. And I didn't eat a lot. I think so much? No, I love Coors Light since day one. The minute it hit my lips, it was so good.
Oh, so good.
Just went in. Frank the tank Coors Light many a night.
That's true.
No, it was So before we get to the bar scene in Lidditz, which is a giant bar, now it is actually probably a pretty big bar scene, but. Driving up there is those nerves. It was like, oh my gosh, all of these things I didn't know yet. I just was knowing that I'm going to this company that is massive, and the people there are top notch. They have their own engineering team. Like, they design in-house their own speakers. They design so many little bits of their systems that other companies have come to them for like knowledge on things, and like they partner with other companies because they can utilize and they can truly push people's equipment to the limits.
Wow.
Like Cisco is a networking company.
Mm-hmm.
They use Cisco on a lot of, I'm not going to say exclusively, but they use it a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's because Cisco probably has some sort of like, hey, give us feedback on what this is doing at these times and these temperatures. Because, you're doing shows in, the middle of January, and then there's shows in the middle of the Sahara.
Right.
So you're getting like all the different types. So I drive up there. I get my roommate. Me and Tim. We move into this little apartment. We're living. Basically, like we're squatting. There's like 2 fold-up chairs, a black and white TV that Tim brought with him. Because I didn't want to.
Dude thing.
Oh, we didn't. But that was the thing, is we didn't care because we knew we'd be going on tour.
Right.
It was like the end goal.
There's no need in like nesting or buying any furniture because you're not going to be around to use it.
Well, and I think we both were under the assumption that we would just leave. Once our little time was up, we'd pay our year lease or do our year lease, and then we'd be gone. So, yeah, we moved in, and it was like, cool. We have 2 folding chairs. I slept on a blow-up bed for
oh my gosh, for how long?
6 months. I think I was there from I left Florida. I've always said that I got hired July 1st. I think was my hire date. So July 1st is maybe not the day that I started at Clair. It might have been like July 9th. But yeah, so from July 9th, and then my first tour was January, I think I flew like January 3rd to Canada for my first tour.
Wow.
So I kind of had help from someone in an older story. So I'll get to that in a second. But so we go up there, go through this training program, and the first day, like we just get thrown in the shop, and they're like, hey, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, they're your bosses. They're some of your bosses. They're the warehouse bosses for this department. And I was like, whoa, there's departments. I mean, it's a massive warehouse. It's like walking into a Walmart.
Gotcha.
Giant. There's speakers everywhere. There's like just cable galore. And there's these black boxes that cables go in. And that was like our first kind of gig, was taking the cables to go get tested. So they have this wall, and I'm talking like a wall that looks like 2 giant Sub-Zero refrigerators. And it's the testing room, and it's this machine that they built.
Wow.
And they wrote code for it, that you plug the cable into one end and you plug the cable in the other end, and you say what kind of cable it is, the length, all this stuff, and it spits out a good.
Wow.
And it's because they are trying to make sure that every tour that goes out, that gets every piece of gear, is
it's ready,
tested, checked. Because some tours, and I can explain this later, you don't have time. You don't have time to worry about like, oh, did that cable? What about this cable? So each cable,
you don't want to hook everything up, and all of a sudden there's no audio because there's something broken in the cable.
And it happens. There's times where it slides through, and it's just whatever. They're 1% of their cables. Right. I mean, not even like
something gets damaged in transport. Something.
So, but that was the point, was you were learning these processes. So you were learning what cable color codes were. You were learning. So we had to learn the resistor color code because like cables didn't. Clair used a number system. Showco used a color system. So if you looked at a cable and it had red and green on it, so it was 25 feet long.
Oh. Okay.
Because of the resistor color code starts up and it's brown, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple.
I was wondering how many colors we were going to go.
You can go a little more longer, but that was the system. And so then their drive systems, the way that they drove the speakers from the consoles, all matched this whole giant system. And that's why you go to learn this stuff. It's so then when you get on the road, you can troubleshoot this stuff.
And the consoles, for people don't know, are like the giant desk-looking things that an engineer stands at, and they push all the buttons and the faders and all of the things.
Yep. And it has, and when I was coming up, it was still a lot analog. Digital was just starting to make its way into the little crazy backstory. Showco was actually one of the first companies to design. Our cat is going crazy. Was one of the first companies to design like a fully automated digital but analog console. And
what?
It's crazy. It's just, but it's in there. So when you walk into Claire, there's the warehouse, but then there's this showroom with all the history.
Oh, that's
and it's just
cool.
so cool
Like a
because
museum.
oh, it's so awesome because
I
there's
still
like
need to go there.
yeah, well, it's like photos of them with Elton John.
Oh,
You know,
'cause he's been a client for a
he's
really
been a
long
client
time,
forever.
right?
Yeah, the Stones, and when they merged, when they started merging with all these like different companies, a big one was Showco down in Texas because they were like the biggest competition. They had like the ZZ Tops, the Led Zeppelins, the Rolling Stones.
So they had more of the rock side.
Maybe you could
sort
say
of?
that country rock in a way. I mean, probably it was a mixture of both, and who knows? They might have gone back and forth. Like they'd win one bid one year and this the other year. Who knows? But when they acquired them, they required a lot of smarts too. And like one of the lead designers at Showco was like a rocket scientist who built like the fly system for the speakers. And so there's just like history after history. So walking into this building for the first day, you're not just intimidated, you're like intimidated. It'd be going from like, oh, I just got the call to go play for the freaking whatever, your favorite team, Yankees. I'm just playing.
How dare you?
I knew you were gonna get
Ew.
the Boston Red Sox.
Thank you.
Kidding.
I would never go play for the Yankees.
That's a lie.
Traitor.
Lie.
No.
Lie.
I'm no Johnny Damon.
Oh, you're such a liar.
Let's move on from the Yankees.
They're like, here's six zeros after this number. You're like, I'm in.
Remove a zero. I'll stay with the Red Sox.
That's a true team. That's a fan there.
Yep.
And that's part of the deal is like going to Claire, you kind of become that team though. You drink the Kool-Aid. You walk in and they hand you like a small Kool-Aid and you're like, what's this? They're like, yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Because they want you to perform at that level, you know, and to perform at that level, you have to be all in. And it was easy to see the people who were all in. They were always gigging or it was just a different, some of them were just good old boys that, you know, they just loved and people loved them. So they worked all the time. But you really could see the people that wanted to be at the top. And
well,
it was really
you were
easy.
Definitely one of those people. I mean, you never said no.
Well, a lot of
Never.
people, I think, go in that way. They're like, I'm going to be at the top. But defeat hurts sometimes. And sometimes, you know, you don't get that gig you want, or sometimes it doesn't work the way you want. And so, yeah, you slowly can go either way in there. But walking in, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the Boston. I'm in the dugout. I'm in the dressing room. I can see the bats. Like, holy cow, my game is coming up shortly.
Yeah.
I need to learn. So having Tim as a roommate was really fun because we didn't worry about, though we would go party, we also didn't really worry about we weren't worried about the furniture. We weren't worried about like if people came over, we needed like a giant TV and a couch and all this junk. We were worried about getting that starting lineup.
Yeah.
And so we crunched and it was cold. It was like July and then all of a sudden it started to get cold up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
and
you're
it was
used to Florida weather. You probably didn't even own a jacket. You still don't own a winter jacket.
I don't. It's all hoodies. I think I've been hoodies for my whole life. So we would go through this training program, and it was interesting because Tim was one of my students. There was another guy named Zach who was one of my students. And then inside of Claire, there was a bunch of people that had been my students too, you know? So it's like I'm starting to see familiar faces. I'm starting to get comfortable. I'm like, okay, I'm shaking the hands of the people that I've seen out on tour come through. It's like, because it's a revolving door.
Right.
Every day.
You recognize some people from Hard Rock that came through and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so we would spend some of our days, I'm going to be wrong about this, but let's just say we spent our afternoons in class and our mornings helping prep tours.
Gotcha.
And then if something big was going on, then we would end up helping the rest of the day, and then we'd just skip class. Because class really was just more like, do you have a question, or let's look over this piece of gear, or let's learn this. It really wasn't like a regimented, like, here's your study book. This is everything.
You have a test tomorrow.
We did have tests. We had an end test that, you know, obviously you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was in.
Yeah, nope.
I thought I had made it. And then inside of all these times, you're doing, you're going out on these like training programs. So we got to go to Philly one time, and I saw Hannah Montana. I don't think she was even Miley Cyrus.
No,
yet.
yeah, back then she definitely
She was
would have been
young.
Hannah Montana.
It was like 2009.
Still. Yeah.
think it might have. If she hadn't changed, it was.
Or she was about to be party in the USA. I think around that time.
I think it was like, I think it was,
close.
she had just went to Miley. But it was cool because it was my first experience seeing an A-market arena tour, not just from the local audio guy bringing in the comm system or the spotlights, where I didn't get to go into the stage. I got to go meet everyone. And then I ended up meeting like a guy named Stryker. And he became
what a cool name.
He's awesome. And then his daughter, she was out on JT with me as the wardrobe girl.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Skylar.
Another cool name. Stryker and Skylar.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was
Did he have a deep voice like that?
Oh, Stryker. He'd be like,
we may have to steal that name. That's a pretty awesome one.
Oh, he cracked me up too. But I met him, and then he ended up becoming my stage manager on Alicia Keys years later. He would call me the Painted Lady. Hey, Painted Lady, get in here.
Painted Lady.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of nicknames. Spring Break.
I can see that one for sure.
Yeah, Spring Break, Baller.
Painted Lady's my new favorite.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad one. So we would go do these training days. I got to go do Journey one day.
Cool.
So I met like a guy named Wookie. It was awesome. And then, so it was like, holy cow, I'm here. I'm doing, and then getting to like help, like then the tours were so cool because it's like once you're in, like then you're able to like, you go and you're like seeing these guys and they're like, oh, hey, you're a new guy at Clair. You want to help me fly this PA? And you're like, yeah, I'm in. Like,
sure.
I don't know what I'm
Tell
doing.
me what to do.
But yeah, like, because some of the
I'll
PAs we hadn't gotten to yet. So it was like just a big, cool little learning experience. And me being in a different mindset in life, all I wanted to do was get on the road. So I figured if I just soaked up everything from everyone.
Learn. Yeah.
Oh, I would stay late. I would, me and Tim would stay late. We would help do the things that no one else wanted to do. And it was because we both wanted it so bad.
Right.
And so it was really cool. And not to bore you with too much of that, but at the end, I ended up moving into like this section of the shop called the E shop. And I became really good friends with this guy named Brian Groff. And he just helped me learn electronics at a different level because I would test the gear, then I would put it into the racks, and I would build these racks for people. And I have pictures of these racks in there, and he showed me how to make them look clean and how to make them accessible.
Function
and,
the best.
Well, yeah, because you can make something look clean, and it's really annoying to then switch something.
Right, right.
But he showed me how to make
Efficient.
it clean. Efficiency. And it was like, it was so mind-boggling, some of these guys that I was around that were just so smart because I'm not that technical. I still use thingamabob to this day.
Yeah.
So having these guys like just dive deep into like theory of sound and theory of electronics and physics and all these things, I was just like, yeah, sure. Then I learned how to skate through because I knew I would never be at that level. But how can I understand it on my level? Maybe I never explain it to someone.
Right.
Maybe I never, ever, ever even show anybody how to do it. Maybe I do, but maybe I don't. But how can I at least learn it? And that was the next like really big thing, is like, how can I get into this and be as efficient as possible without having to go back to school one more time to learn physics or electronics at a different level. And so I just would dive in with these guys and just sit there and absorb. And through this process, it started to pay off, obviously, because I was getting noticed by not only the other roadies. I was making. I'm the mayor. One 100%. One front house guy named me that years ago, and I never really saw it. But yeah, I was the mayor. I shook all the hands. I met all the people.
You're a very friendly, personable type of personality.
Yeah, I kissed the hands and shake the babies.
Wrong.
It was like, yeah, the other you know what I mean.
Shake the hands, kiss the babies. Kiss the hands, shake the babies.
That's from a movie, I think. I've always tried to say it that way too. People always like, huh?
Or like, I don't think you're supposed to shake the baby.
So I did, but that was my gig. I was the mayor, and so as December rolled closer, we were getting ready to do the Winter Olympics in Canada. As a company, they were hanging speakers and running networks, and it was, I mean, the list of guys that were going,
it's like an all hands on deck situation.
It wasn't all hands on deck. It was the A list, and it was like, And one day I get this call. They're like, "Hey, can you go take a photo up in?" And I'm around all the other RITs too, you know.
What's an RIT? Oh, the roadies in training. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Hey, can you come up to the office?" And it was like the touring, you know, people's office that if you go to their office, you're either talking about a flight or
you're about to go do something.
Yeah, your passport number, all this stuff. And so I get up there and they're like, "Hey, can you just sit in the wall? We're gonna take this snap on like this photo of you." And all right, cool. And your passport? All right, it's all up to date. And I'm like, "Yeah." I didn't know this until later, but I was slated already. I hadn't even done the test. I didn't even do the...
But they were already planning ahead for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was because I was that Full Sail teacher. And so, like, even at some days, it was kind of funny because Dave would go and have to go. He was a trainer still, and he was also a tour helper, and he was still, you know, he was doing a lot of things. And every once in a while, he'd be like, "Hey, can you walk them through the... loading a module up on and I'd be like, this is so weird, because then I would be in this room in the office, like where we call them the carpet walkers, and here's all these like geniuses walking by, and here's a guy that's in the RIT program explaining to the RITs about
how to do things,
like about these networks and stuff, or not networks, but these modules that we would use to drive the PAs. And it was like nerve wracking because I'm just getting like eyes stared at. I'm like, this stinks. But it's kind of cool then, because then they truly like think I was doing a good job.
Well, they're trusting you.
Yeah.
And it's an even higher compliment coming from the guy who originally was like, "You will never work at Clair," and then hires you. And then not only does he hire you, he's like, "Teach these other minions how to do things."
But we were all minions. That was the craziest part. But yeah, it was nice. And I still laugh about it with Tim every once in a while to this day. But okay. So Elmo, John Sheldon, who I talked about in a couple episodes, he was my teacher, and he was the one that I always aspired to be like. So I go through this training program, and I've taken the photo to go somewhere that I don't know about yet.
But you know that something's happening. They've taken your photo. And they asked about your passport.
Yeah. And there was a roadie room that was down in the corner by the mic room. And if you got a call, they usually called you over the PA, and that was the telephone that you went to go answer it at. And sure enough, they're like, Phil Chris, Leon Hopkins over the loudspeaker. And I was like, whoa. Ooh. And I don't even think I'd taken the test still yet. Right. And I was like, oh gosh. So I go into the room, and of course I'm around all the other RITs again, and they're all staring at me.
Oh, they're in the room with you?
Well, no, they're in the warehouse. You know, we're all working and building cables.
And they're like, why are you getting called over the PA?
Oh, it was like, of course, like, again, like, where are you going, huh? And I'm like, I don't know.
Somewhere cool.
I walk in to the room, I answer the phone, and Leon he's a nice guy. We've always been close. And,
yeah, he was your point guy, really.
Yeah, I was called him my manager. Yeah, my manager's giving me another gig.
Pretty much.
If he probably heard
That's
that,
what we do.
He probably slapped me through the phone if I called him my manager in that way. But he gets on the phone. He's like, "Hey, so you're gonna go out on Guns N' Roses?" And I was like, "Whoa,
excuse me." First tour ever, and you're going out with absolute legends.
Well, it was Axl and Friends.
It does not matter. You're going out with legends.
It was cool, and
one of the biggest rock bands ever to exist.
Well, it was fun because my mom wouldn't let me go see them as a kid.
Oh yeah.
So it was like, F you, I just won, and I wasn't close with my mom at the time, so I was like an even bigger like. I'm sticking it to my parents now. Yeah, so I get this call, and he's like, "All right, well, don't tell anyone." I'm like, "All right." So I go back out, and they're like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Nothing. No. We should probably do these cables." Like, and everyone's like,
asking how to spell my name.
Yeah, they're like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, Nowhere. And so then I go and I take this test, and we all pass. I think at this point, one person. So it was like a class of 6. We were down to 5. I think one person had dropped out.
Gotcha.
Actually, I think they kicked him out.
Oh dear. Bye.
But it was that kind of program. You don't want those people.
No.
It's a good way to weed out.
Yeah, for sure.
So I get this call and all this stuff, and then I think I might have told Tim. I was like, "All right, between you and me, I'm going on Guns N' Roses."
Oh.
Well, come to find out, John, when I made it out there on tour, John had told them that he wanted me out there because he had gone back to mix. Now, that's how he never, John and me were close, but I don't feel like he ever said it that it was like, I demanded you. It was just like, I put out a wish list and you happen to be, now that I know that you're there, I put you out there.
That's cool.
So it was awesome. So here I was back into now a different, like a completely different, okay, I made it. Now they're like throwing me in the game.
Yeah. Well, and you're finally getting to realize your lifelong dream. You are about to be on a tour bus.
I'm about to.
You're a roadie. It's official. It's happening.
Things were going off and it was that moment. It was like, oh my gosh, I made it. Oh my gosh, what do I do now?
Yeah.
and there's so much inside of you that I'm about ready to go on a tour with a bunch of guys who've been doing it too forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how do you walk into something like that? And you have to. I had to let go of emotion. I had to let go of feeling. I had to slowly become a machine because if I took anything to heart, if I let myself not think that I could do it, I would have failed.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went into it and it was like, okay, I'm flying up here. Even if I'm unsure, I just have to look down and do it. I just have to figure it out. And I did, and it was really fun. I got to be around some of the greatest people ever on my first tour, and I met some people that I still talk to this day, and I made a good impression with some of them, and they asked about me later on, and one guy still calls to this day and wants me to go and be his SE.
Yep.
That to me was exactly what I wanted out of the industry. I didn't realize it at the time. I more just wanted the legendary status of riding on a tour bus.
Right.
That's all I kept thinking about. Was like, well, if I F this up, I don't get to ride on this tour bus.
Right. I've got to get there.
And they're amazing.
They are awesome.
There isn't. Okay, I will clear this one thing up. This whole episode is dedicated to only the good of touring. There's a whole nother side to touring that just sucks.
Right.
That everybody should know.
But we're talking about the cool stuff today.
Because it is cool. There is such a cool thing about it. And there I was getting to call my friends, and they're like, "Oh man, how's it going up there?" Mm-hmm. It's like, dude, I'm about to go on tour. They're like, "No way, with who?" And it's like Guns N' Roses. What?
That's so awesome.
And it was.
So, what was it like the first time that you stepped onto a tour bus?
Oh my gosh!
Like, did you get to pick your bunk? Was your bunk like the last one that was available?
I don't know if I was the last one, but being the new guy, yeah, you don't get to pick.
Yeah. Did you get your favorite bunk? What became your favorite bunk?
So actually, no, my first bunk was, so on most of the buses that I've ever ridden on, except a few occasions, it was a 12-person bus. And so there'd be 12 bunks, 6 on one side of the bus, 6 on the other. And my first bunk was the top rear passenger side. So
okay,
2 bunks up there, I'd have to climb into my bunk. And I slept on that side for quite a while, and I can't remember the exact reason I switched, but the driver's side became my side.
I remember when we first started dating and you told me that you always get top rear driver's side, and I was like, well, why is that? And you were like, well, if there's an accident, the driver's obviously going to protect themselves, so I want to be on whatever side of the bus he's on. And I was like, I am forever going to sleep on the driver's side anytime I'm out on the road.
I mean,
it was great advice. It made sense.
If I was a driver, I would probably swerve to the not because I want to kill that side of the bus. It's instinct. I think it's instinct.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
you're
100%
just like,
instinct. That's why, like, as soon as you said that to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is genius. And then I started telling people, and they started being like, oh, well, I want to be on the driver's side. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to make sure that I still get a driver's side bunk since I shared this information with you.
Yeah. Well, and the other, if you sleep on the bottom, to me, it was too loud. I have to have.
I just don't like being by the shoes.
Well, I slept with everything in my
Stinky
bunk.
feet.
From day one, I learned that if I put my bag or if I put my shoes in a place, there'd be a high chance in the morning it'd be moved. And I was like, well, I really don't want to deal with that. I think I just want to
keep your stuff in your bunk.
Yeah, just so I would actually slide my shoes under my backpack every night, like to the side. And I'm not like a tall guy. Some guys, you just can't sleep with your bag and all that.
It's not possible, yeah.
And it's small. It's a coffin. I mean, you're like literally in a coffin.
And some of the best sleep, though, because it's like
Dark,
so dark.
cold.
It's cold, and you've got like the slight swaying of the bus. Yeah.
Well, and that was
Sleep so well on a
that
bus.
was like what I found out was I was like, oh, holy cow, the bottom is noisy.
Mm-hmm.
The middle is the that's like that's the sweet spot. Like you don't get too much sway, but you get just enough noise. But then to me, I was always like terrified. What if these guys hit a bump and then the top
they,
bunk comes
fall
down?
through on top of you.
Funny story. It did. I watched it happen one time.
No.
Yeah, I'll tell that story in a minute. But yeah, so going through touring, you're at the beginning, you're the noob. You are the new guy. You get. It's not hazing, I would say, but there is a bit of hazing in a way. Like you get run on. You get talked down to.
Of
you
course.
They're
making you pay your dues.
It is a rough sport to be in.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy, and it's not easy for guys, and it's not easy for girls. But the ones that come out
harder on the girls in the beginning.
it is. There's arguments to both sides that like, oh, they get it easy because everyone wants to help them. It's like, no, that's not true. I've watched.
You definitely weren't like that.
No, if you were on my crew, I wanted you to work because I thought that it was good. I don't want to hold your hand for one because I don't get paid to do two jobs.
I remember that's how you were with Espinoza when I first met her out on the road with you. You were hard on her, but it was good.
Some people probably hate me for it. I mean, I could probably tell you.
Maybe in the thick of it, but I think maybe looking back, they're probably like, oh, okay, well, it made me learn. And
yeah, I could have done stuff way better as I grew in the industry. But so, yeah, I started at the bottom, and right off the bat, I must have made a good impression because I went from Guns N' Roses. I think I flew home for a day, got back on a plane, and flew back across the country to New York to start Alicia Keys.
Wow.
And what was interesting for me, and I will say this, maybe I did become part of the good old boys club where I was looked at as maybe a favorite. And I don't think it was because of the technical side. It was because I could just get put into any situation and I was going to go make friends.
Right.
I was never the best tech. I was never.
And you hustled.
I did hustle.
Yeah.
I hustled.
The work ethic makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I also made sure that other departments, and I think it really stemmed from having to work with be those people too. Not to say that people don't get it, but I just had this outlook like, why should I fight this?
Right.
It's not worth it. I'd much rather go and have a beer or go find a Red Bull or go for a walk or go do anything other than talk about cables and microphones the rest of my day.
Yeah.
And that was because it was that I didn't tour for that reason. I toured to party. And then I realized that, oh, wow, I'm finding loopholes in touring because it is easier because all this stuff stays together and I just pull it out of the box every day and then it goes right back in the same hole. So then I started working with
even more efficient.
These, oh my gosh. And I started working with these great other techs that I'd go watch them. I'd be like, all right, how are they? Oh, that's how they did that. I'd steal that one. I'd steal that one. I'd put that in my work box. And it really was so cool because I just would go tour to tour. And my first year I went Guns N' Roses, Alicia Keys, excuse me, the Scorpions, back to Guns N' Roses. Well, no, then back to Alicia because then we did a summer. It was like a spring, and then I did something in the middle, and then I went and did a fall. Came back from Alicia Keys. I'd just flown back from Europe, and I was gonna go buy a motorcycle with my dad, and we were at the dealership, and I get this phone call, and they're like, "Can you fly to Rome tomorrow?"
Tomorrow,
like, sure.
And you're like, "Yeah, I've never been there."
And that was the other thing too, is the sad part is I did have girlfriends, and I did have all these things that I probably should have put more attention to, but all of a sudden I was so selfish because I was like, oh my gosh, I get to tell these stories. I get to go see these bands. I get to go see the world.
Well, your dream was to make it as a roadie.
So I just wrote everything off. Yeah. Pretty much. And I look back on it and it probably could have been done in a better way.
Sure.
But I never said no. And then I slowly became sure, no problem. I'll be there tomorrow. Because then money was coming in. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Good money.
Decent money. I still hadn't hit like anything.
The real good money yet.
Yeah. But I was making all these friends. And so, then I flew back for Guns N' Roses and I did this awesome European run. I come back to the States and they're like, oh, can you go do Justin Bieber? So in 1 year I did 5 different acts.
Wow.
And it was just.
And across multiple genres. How cool is that?
incredible. Like
Yeah.
some of the shows that I saw too, I'll never unsee because they were just so one of a kind and so amazing. And pictures, I could always show pictures and I could always tell people, oh, check this video out that I took on my phone. But being in the heat of those moments and doing some of those things, it's a different feeling. Even some of the Guns N' Roses stuff, it was at the time where Axl was late a lot of times. So there was terrifying moments too. Like there was a time in Canada where he hadn't even left another city and he was supposed to be on stage already.
Oops.
And they're like,
Crowd getting restless.
he just got on the flight, and you're like, "Oh, this is gonna be bad." Oh yeah, they were throwing, and up in Canada, they used loonies and toonies for dollars and $2.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's like hard.
Yeah.
It's like coins or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a fake UK stuff. It's the Monopoly money.
Monopoly money.
But
Sorry, Canada, don't hate us.
No, it's fun. But they were starting to throw them at the stage, and we were just sitting there, and I remember at one point someone was like, "Hey, take your radio off, take your laminate off, just get ready to walk out like a normal person."
Because you don't want people to know you're part of the tour.
Just wanted to leave, and it was like, "Oh my gosh!"
So did he ever show?
Yeah, he showed up.
How late?
Oh, I mean, some nights it was like 2, 3, 4 hours late.
my
3 and 8. I think maybe
So he was
maybe
like-
not 4 hours late, but 3 hours late.
He was pulling a Madonna.
No, he just was pulling. He was just doing him.
I mean, she is like notoriously multiple hours late.
Yeah, and who cares why he was late? Doesn't matter. But it was funny to me because it was like, wow. And we would put the opening act on at the beginning.
And then there's just crickets.
Well, there was like house music.
It's like, hey, opening act, can you go back on for like 3 hours? Do you have enough songs in your repertoire to
and then
do
people
that?
start to just get drunker and drunker.
And
So
angrier and angrier.
It either went one or two ways. It either went we used to do the boob cam. So
oh my god.
We would though, but it was to keep the crowd occupied. It wasn't
Right.
because we had never seen boobs before, but we started to the camera guys would all go get in position, and then they would start to slowly go out and put someone on the screen.
Right.
And then the minute they notice they're on the screen, you take them away, and then you go put someone else on, and then you go back to that person, and then the crowd goes wild, and and then you come off of them again,
Right.
in hopes that all of a sudden they do something wild.
Ridiculous,
And we saw some wild stuff up there, but
I'm sure.
But it was fun those nights, but then it was scary nights where, then they got drunk, angry drunk.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'd be mad if I had been waiting hours and paid a butt ton of money.
yeah. And then there was moments where all of a sudden we were in the UK and Duff came out for the first time and played with him in 15 years or 12 years, whatever it had been at that point. And it was like, this is history right here.
Yeah.
And then we all went back to the hotel room and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the start to it getting back together. Is there going to be a GNR reunion tour?
With the legit members.
One of the guys called it. He goes, this is it. He goes, I can just tell you right now, seeing him back on stage.
If Duff is back, it's going to happen.
And fast forward in my career, I went from a PA tech to I skipped over the monitor tech. I never wanted to be it because I'd learned how to ride the system. So I was like, nah, I just want to be a PA tech. And I was having the time of my life. I was partying. I was drinking. I was seeing the world. It was like some of the funnest moments of my life.
I'm sure.
Because I knew how to come in hungover and do my job flawlessly most days. And then just go back to the bus and have zero responsibility. I didn't have to tune this PA. I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to do that. I'm just getting paid to come out here, be on a bus, and then I got to do a schmooze with everybody all day long. And then I met Johnson. Eek Johnson changed it all for me.
I love that dude.
Him and Rich Shoenadel, they were the two of my favorite people I'd ever toured with. And it was Carrie Underwood. And I was like, I'd been talked up to him and this monitor guy Cam, like, oh, you're gonna love Phil. And he shows up the first day, and I wasn't drinking at the time. I needed a break or something. And he's like, are you ready to go drink? I was like, no, I'm sober right now. He was like, they lied to me.
No, you're not.
They lied to me. I stayed sober for maybe 2 weeks.
That's tough.
It was actually Bridgestone here in Nashville. We played here. finished the show. We loaded out as fast as we could, and we ran over to Bootleggers, which was like the moonshine bar at the time.
I think it's still open.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think it is.
So we ran over to Bootleggers because they all had a girl that used to make this thing called the Blue Death or something like that.
Dear.
Oh, we were hammered. We drank all until the buses had to come down Broadway and pick us up because we had missed bus call in the arena.
Stop. I can't believe they actually came to get you and didn't oil spot you.
Well,
I'm
we had
shocked.
I think,
because you had Eek with you.
Well, we also had the production assistant with us too, so
they couldn't really leave you guys.
couldn't leave
Wow,
us.
y'all are a hot mess.
And so we hop on the bus, and we rage party. Like, not rage mean party, but just like wild out all the way to Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Gosh.
So I don't know how many
So
hours.
long.
But probably like 8-hour drive.
At least.
Drank the
It
entire
might be
way
10
there.
hours.
Well, I wasn't sober anymore now. And I drank, and then that was when Eek, I think, found love for me in his heart in a friendship way. Because I remember I was still drunk, and he's like, no, let's go drink across the street from Lombardi Field. Lambeau Field?
I think it's Lambeau. Field.
Lombardi?
Green
Lamborghini
Bay?
Field?
I think it's Lambeau.
I don't know. I'm not good on the Green Bay Packers, but I don't know.
Continue.
So we go across the street, and there's like this little bar, and the guy sat down, and he must have known I was in a randy mood. I'm gonna say Randy.
Randy. Okay, Austin Powers.
I was in a randy mood, and he was pouring me rock glass shots of Jaeger.
Ugh.
And I was just taking him down like nothing.
Lambeau Field, I win.
Okay, Lamborghini Field.
Lamborghini Field.
And I was taking these shots of Jaeger, just like nothing. I ended up putting on a waitress outfit that night.
Stop.
I was like, I fell in the parking.
Do you have pictures of this outfit?
I think I just have one photo of me with one of the drivers. We had swapped clothes at one point.
Oh my goodness.
I went to a table and took an order so drunk. I remember they said that my notepad just had scribbles on it.
Out of hand.
But I fell in the parking lot, and Eek was trying to pick me up, and I just he told me that I was just doing like this worm across the. So we became friends, and through that, I would then bring him a drink every night. We really truly bonded, and as time went forward, he needed a guy again for a tour, and he was like, "Well, why don't you just be my guy?" And we were about to go. It was American Idol live.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Why don't you be my?" It's super easy. Like the production manager, super chill. It'd be a good first learning. And I was like, "Well, I gotta be like a monitor tech, and I don't want to be a monitor tech because I just didn't like that side of it. I hated being on stage with the band. There's just so much detail to that side of the gig, and a whole nother laundry list of stuff that I just
no interest.
Nope. Yeah. I wanted zero. I wanted my days to be fun, and Eek was like, "Nah, dude, come be out front of house with me." I was like, I can't do that. He goes, I'll talk to someone. Next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call. I used to make them so mad. Like Leon would probably has like more gray hairs in his hair sometimes because of me. Well, not in like necessarily all the bad ways, but front of house guys would ask for me to come do things, or like he'd be like,
and they're
Phil,
like,
stop.
that's not technically a position.
They're like, Phil, stop telling people you're available. I'm like, well, aren't I? And they're like, shh. Maybe you are, but that's not the point.
But still,
I'm your agent.
Right. Stop being your own agent.
So he talked to the powers that be, and next thing I know, I get a phone call. They're like, all right, well, you're going to go be an SE. So I skipped a whole position.
Wow.
And when I went my first day, I forgot this part. Oh, I didn't forget this part, but this is a great thing about Dave. Again, remember sitting in his office, we finally meet face to face, and he's like, oh, you're Phil. Okay, nice to meet you.
Wait, like...
Never met him. It was always phone call interviews that I did with him.
So when you're getting ready to go do this American Idol tour, this is the first time?
No.
Okay.
This is
back when you first started.
I had to reverse him a little bit. Yeah,
I was like, how are you in the same warehouse as this guy and you never meet face to face?
No. We met many.
Okay.
I was in his class
back
every
when
day.
you first started.
This is before my even first day. It was like come to the shop and walk around. I'll show you around. So that way, when you get here for your very first day, it's not complete.
Gotcha.
You're not walking in blind. And I remember I was sitting in his office, and he was like, "So, it's awesome that thanks for learning, and thanks for showing up."
Me wrong. Good job.
Exactly. And it was like I didn't need my horn tooted. He wasn't tooting my horn. He was just like, "Good on you, man."
Awesome. Yeah.
And I remember he had asked me some like a question like, okay, so where do you see yourself in Claire in 5 years and 10 years and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know, what's like the top position? He was like, well, like our SE is that's like the crew chief SE is kind of the pinnacle top part. And I was like, all right, well there. He was like, okay, well it takes a long time to get there. I was like, I don't know, like 5 years? He's like, no, like 10 years, like
minimum.
it takes, well, and then too, it was a little bit different of a structure. They, there was a little bit of time that you had to put in. It wasn't just, oh, we like you, so now you're moving up. It was, you had to prove yourself. But Eek used his amazing Eek talent, and he went in there, and he was like...
So after, what is this, like after a year?
No, this is 2013, so 4 years.
4 years.
I became an SE.
Oh, Dave.
It's good times, and I say that story not because I want to call Dave out. That's not the point. The point is that everything that I'd set my mind to, that I've told myself I'm going to accomplish in life, I've done it.
Yeah.
Whether it be because someone helped me or because I did it on my own accord. But most of the time, it's because someone helped me.
Yeah.
There's no way you could go through life. There's no way that I would have been able to get into touring without people helping me.
Right.
Like, just
for sure.
Point blank. Like, from my grandma and my dad to start it all off, all the way through to now.
Absolutely.
All I've had is help. And so I can look at myself and say, sure, I was the one that had to show up and do some of the things, but if it wasn't for Eek, I would have never become an SE for some of these tours I've done, And so, yeah, he put my name in, and boom, there I was. Now I'm an SE. And it was very, very apparent right off the bat, though, that I was not technically looked at as like a high SE.
Right.
It was
you just started.
Well, I had made my way to the top of being a PA tech because I was doing all the rad PA tours and doing all this hard stuff. And
now you had to start at the bottom.
Well, going around the world as a PA tech too is not always a thing that you do. So I was able to actually go around the world a few times as a PA tech before I even became an SE. And so I did this small little American Idol run with Eek, but I got to hang out with, again, just legends, because it was like one of those tours where everybody knew it was so easy. Like, yeah, I'm in. Because all we're going to do is like, no one cares. Because they're American Idol like contestants. Right. Everybody kind of looked at them as like you're an artist, but you're not really an artist. Like,
well, it wasn't like working for a Guns N' Roses who has had, multi millions of records sold. I mean, these are artists who are getting their start.
But it was funny.
It was like you were working for a tour of opening acts.
Well, we were about as famous as most of them. Yeah. In other words, and so it was like kind of just a fun, like, bantering day of like, we gave them hell, they gave us hell, and whatever. It was fun. All of a sudden, once I was done with that, it was like, okay, well, now what? What do I do next? Because I had Eek as my blanket.
Right.
Like, I was with him on Carrie, then I went right into American Idol, and it was like, okay, well, now what? Yeah. And that's when I met a guy named Andy Baldwin. That's who it was. They're like, all right, well, we're going to send you to London to the Emirates Stadium where Arsenal plays.
Oh, that was my your favorite.
Well, they weren't then. But they are now,
yeah.
Well, the security guard for Carrie Underwood used to always tell me about them.
Okay.
And he goes, oh, if you ever get to go there, mate, you're going to freaking love it. Sure enough, I was there for like 5 days with Green Day,
so
All-Time
awesome.
Low, and one other big one, but whatever. So Andy's showing me a whole new technique now.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this Eek did a great job. Here's another technique. So all of a sudden now I'm like taking all these other things again. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be an SE, I'm never going to be the most technical SE. I'm never going to be the best SE. But I can make my way to the top.
For sure.
I know I can. And so...
Archimedes.
And so...
He just wants to go outside.
I did. I absorbed. And it was amazing because then all of a sudden I'd finished that gig and I got to go around... Well, I should say this. They got rid of one person from the Green Day camp, and I was already in Europe, and so they were like, "Well, why don't you just hop on as a PA tech?" I was like, "Okay, well, I'm kind of an SE, but sure, I'll get paid to be that." And I got there and there was a whole lot of drama, and they're like, actually, you're the crew chief, but not the crew chief, but the SE, but not the SE. And I was like, whatever, I'm on tour. So I got to go through Russia and all these like awesome countries with Green Day, and it was amazing. And then I come back, and that was my first experience of like getting put on a beginner's tour, and it was Florida Georgia Line.
Wow.
And that's where I met Jared and all of them, and I've been with them I did like 9 off and on tour or years like with them, or 8 years, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and
as you did at least 2 since we've been together.
I mean, I've done
maybe
5.
even 3 with them. Yeah.
5 or 6. And then on top of that, I would go do one-offs, or I'd go do stadiums, or I'd go do all these other little things with them. And so I just started to like really build my resume and build I was mayoring it up. I was shaking because now I wasn't dealing with just the crews around me. I was dealing with the crews around me plus the production manager plus because as like a PA tech, I wasn't having to go into these offices and have meetings and have to make real decisions.
Right.
All of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean delays? I don't know, put them wherever. I mean, you can't put them wherever. Oh, dang it. Yeah,
okay.
You can't.
I guess I better figure this out then.
How much is this way? I don't know. Why don't you know? And that was my downfall, though. I was just never technical, and I just would always like be like, but I was always humble enough to say, let me go get the answer. Like,
I feel like you definitely became more technical, though. I mean, I remember when you were doing the Justin Timberlake tour, and that production was very, very detailed, and you were in all different kinds of buildings, and you were always on your laptop doing that crazy computer program, like mapping out how you were going to fly these speakers and stuff.
I did become more technical over the years. I probably will equate it to the fact that shortly after I started doing, here's another fun one. I went back to Guns N' Roses when Duff, and so 2010, I would have never believed that the whole band was getting back together, or most of them.
And stuff too.
Slash, Duff. I was like, no way. Even though they said it, and Duff played in London that night. I have video of it. I didn't believe it. And then sure enough, I get this call from Claire, and they're like, hey, can you go help Karam get Guns N' Roses started in Detroit? And that's my buddy that always still calls. And I would go tour with him. I love him. And sure enough, I fly to Detroit, and now I'm like helping this tour set up to be to go into stadiums for 3 or 4 years or whatever. I mean, it's still going as a monster. And I was like, wow, it's like everything happens full circle. You know, I started as a PA tech there, and then now I went into being an SE, helping SE. Yeah. And then, so then it really changed when I did the Carrie Underwood tour as EEC's SE, system engineer, because it was in the round.
That was the one when we had just met, right? 2016?
Yep. And it was wild. I didn't know anything about In the Round other than I knew what it was, and I knew
Explain what that is to our listeners.
Well, it's when, you know, I've explained it before, but it's when the stage is in the center of the arena and everybody, you can see it 360 as opposed to being a left and a right side or whatever.
So basically what it means is that you can technically sell every single seat in that arena because you don't have any obstructed views like you would if you had the stage placed at one end or the other of the arena.
Exactly. And it was cool, but it taught me, and that's when I had Brett and Espinoza, and it was a small crew. I even had Cap and Cam. It was so much stuff that we had to push ourselves to the absolute limit because there was a giant stage. It was giant PA speakers. We had to fly it all in the air every day. It was back-to-back shows. It was, you know, like you name it, I learned so much on that. But that's where I think I really got a chance to take my SEing to a new level. And that's where, after that tour, I went back to Florida Georgia Line for a hot minute. And then I got that call to go do Jay-Z. And that's what I was talking about, where Clair comes in amazing as a company because their reach was so far that when it was time to do Jay-Z, they had fired the audio company. And there was a 2-day turnaround.
And the tour was starting.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not talking like, oh, you just have to change 2 cables. They ripped every cable out from that audio company.
Y'all had to replace everything.
Had to build a complete audio package. I'm talking from the microphone cables that went to the drum kit all the way to the big cables that went in the air. And I remember showing up, and the production manager at the time was also the production manager on Carrie, and he was like, "I know you got this." And I was like, "I don't, but I'll make it work.
I'll figure it out."
And I spent hours, like 2 or 3 days, just fully awake, just making truck packs, making.
I remember that
plots.
being the hardest tour that you've done since
we've
been together.
Definitely hard, but I got to be around once again some of the greatest individuals in the world. You know, I got to like stand next to Pooch every night and listen to him mix.
Such an awesome show.
Oh my!
When it came to Bridgestone, I was just like blown away.
I've never heard a hip hop artist sound as good as Pooch made it.
It was
sound.
awesome, and that live band that was like hidden under his stage. I mean, it was amazing,
unreal. To this day, I mean, I had seen the likes of who's the one rapper, Chance the Rapper.
I
saw Chance the Rapper out there at front of house next to me. I saw Usher was next to me. Probably like a few more. I'm just forgetting. Maybe Kendrick Lamar was one of them. I forget. But what I'm saying is that it was so good sounding. It sounded so good in those arenas that watching those guys lose themselves in the moment of a show, you're like,
so cool.
Okay, whatever.
The respect level so high.
Oh, and they're patting the engineer on the back. They're not going and patting Jay-Z. They're patting Pooch on the back. You know, it's like, wow, that is next level stuff right there. So that was like, wow. Okay. And we got there, landed, hit the ground, and went running. And the first show, I remember we had stayed up all night trying to get the subs ready for Pooch. Like, we were having some technical issues. Stayed up almost all night. I think I went back to the hotel, slept for 2 hours, came in at like 7 a.m, and just had to start labeling gear, making sure everything was ready for the different trucks to go on. We had limitations too, because they wanted to keep it at a certain number of trucks. And
and the production was just wild.
And then we were going to do a big swap in the middle for cables, because they just like put cables out there because we had to get it up in the air. But they weren't.
Needed other ones, yeah.
We needed it to be a little more streamlined, and I got there early in the morning, stayed all the way. I remember walking out of the building at 6 a.m. and they're like, "Hey, it was about 6 a.m. We had loaded all the trucks, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna go get on Jay-Z's private jet right now, and you're gonna fly to Vegas."
Because you had to be there to meet the trucks.
To meet the trucks. But in my mind, I was so tired. I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. Because then like I'll sleep like 30 minutes on the plane. Because it's a quick flight. LA to Vegas is quick. Like 30 minutes. I was like, I'll sleep on the plane. And then when I land, I'll just go sleep in the freaking seats for a couple hours while I wait for gear to get there. But I forgot that my PA truck had left at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So it was already
like almost there.
Yeah, because it's a 3.5 hour drive, 4 hour drive. And I was like, so I land in Vegas. I'm tired. I'm like, oh, whatever.
And at that point, I don't think you had slept for like 2 days.
Yeah, I don't even remember what Jay-Z's plane looks like. I honestly don't. Like, I just remember it was a private jet. It was nice, and the minute I hit that seat, I was out. And I was in one of those sideways seats too. Everybody thinks private jets are like the most comfortable. They are. Don't get me wrong. They are.
Way better than commercial airlines.
This is me not.
But you're not like in a bed.
I wasn't in a bed. Yeah,
No.
I was in a sideways seat on a wall with a small throw pillow.
Right.
I wasn't sleeping in a giant bed. So, but it was still amazing. So whatever, we land. I like get to the T-Mobile arena and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go. And I watch one of my speakers roll in front of me out to the arena floor. And I was like,
no.
Oh, this is going to be a long day. So I was up that whole day. So I got 30 minutes of sleep, went the whole day, did the show. And the only other times I remember seeing the sun in Vegas was I was still doing blow and smoking cigarettes, outside of the casino.
This time
I was walking out of the arena bay doors, just like, I don't know if I'm going to make it on this tour. This is going to be the hardest thing in the world. And it was grueling. Yeah. But the pros that we were, every department, we finally got it down to where we were out of buildings in 2.5 hours.
Amazing.
It's great. It's incredible how much talent is out on the road.
I remember you came home from that so exhausted because you'd gone, like you said, from FGL, and that was Was that when we got Archie?
I don't know. No, I like literally flew. I remember I came home.
You came home to Nashville for like a night.
No, not even a night, for hours.
Oh, and then you flew out. Yeah, so you went straight out on Jay-Z, and then you came home.
Went straight.
And then you went to Kanye.
Yeah, I did Christmas at
You
Kanye's
did
house.
Christmas Eve at Kanye's house. Then you come home, and then you went straight into Justin Timberlake prep
2 years.
for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was I barely saw you for those 2 years.
Yeah, it was it was amazing though. Those are those moments where people are like, "Man, that's so cool," and it's like it is, but it's grueling. Like
it's not all glamour.
And that's where I was saying earlier. It's like
a lot of hard work.
You're gonna hear all these names, and people are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool," but it's like, yeah, but
it's also not like you're like hanging out with the artist.
No.
Like you're on their tour, you're getting paid via them, but. Yeah. You're out there grinding it out while they're doing other stuff.
I'm not even getting paid by them. I'm getting paid by their...
Yeah. by their business management.
By some other person that's way down the line from where they are. And that's what I was getting at, though. It's like, this isn't... None of it was easy. None of this climb was easy. And when you asked me that question the other day, it was... Or, now a month ago. It was such a loaded question because I could not tell this story because there's just so much involved in my life all the time. And to rewrite my life again right now, I'm back to square one. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm back to being in the shop. I'm back to being in Full Sail. I'm back to being at Hooters. It's like all these steps are grueling. I mean, like there's days where I'm just like beat right now at home, but it's not because I'm like trying to push because I want to be famous or because I want to go and drive a Lamborghini. Don't get me wrong, those things are great. If that's what someone wants in life, go do it. I think that those are amazing dreams to have. My dream is so I never step out of this house ever again without doing it for myself and for my family, because I miss so much time with you and I don't want to miss any time with Maverick. And so to me, it's not about would a giant bank account help? Awesome. Yeah. Like we have some cool sponsors now.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we've made it. No. We still have such a giant way to go. And that's part of this process though, is that it's like, am I okay? Of course I'm okay. I'm better than okay. I'm like, I've never been happier. I've never been more mentally motivated. I've never been.
I don't think you've ever been more mentally, spiritually, and emotionally healthy.
100%. And it's because of all these times of just getting stomped on. I mean, just that's what touring is. You really do get stomped on some days. But you got to wake up tomorrow and go do it again. Yep. And if you don't, then go home. No
excuses.
Go home. Whatever. There's 400 other roadies right now that would give all that they could to be out on this tour. Yep. Be on that bus, to be in that seat, to do what you're doing. So shut up, go do it. I don't think anyone really knows what I'm doing here, so probably no one cares. No one's like signing up to live my life now. But I know the feeling of what it's like to be at the bottom again, and to be at that bottom of the food chain, and you're just like, all right, I just have to wake up. Today I just have to wake up and I have to make it to the end, and I have to do the things that I have to do because they suck. And I heard it put really good the other day by someone. It says, I wrote it down because it was so good that it was like, how have I never heard it put this way?
And who said this?
It's this one of those guys I follow on Instagram, the hardcore closer.
Okay.
And you could like him or hate him. I don't care. But he wrote, I act my way into a feeling because I will never feel my way into action.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I can never feel my way into going outside and working out or running or anything like that. Right. But I can mentally
do it to gain the feeling after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's exactly what this is right now. So am I okay? I'm amazing. And it hurts. It's like some mornings I wake up and I'm exhausted. Yeah. I am not only physically and mentally exhausted, but some days I'm spiritually exhausted.
For sure.
Some days I'm emotionally exhausted because like hell, I've cried a couple times to you, just like, this is so hard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what to do right now because it's so hard. And but it's okay because I know that today might have been hard, but tomorrow might be an easier day. And,
Yeah.
and building this podcast isn't, like I said, it isn't for the fame. It's
Right.
for the mental health of me, this family, and the generations afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to take time. It's going to take many years of more grueling nights and more grueling days. And but what else am I going to do?
Well, and you seem to actually enjoy it, though.
I do.
Which is awesome. You know, it's like you've said a couple of times on other episodes that, you know, you didn't get into touring because of a passion for music or like a love for audio or anything like that. You know, you got into it because you wanted to be on the road, you wanted to see the world, you wanted to party.
Yeah.
But it seems like you are actually very passionate about all of the little details that go along with making this podcast.
Yeah, and it's the little, like yesterday, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but, you know, yesterday was a giant win for our production because on the other side, on the flip side, which we'll talk about down the road this year probably, the project I've been working on got a giant boost yesterday, not monetarily or not anything like that,
but just a big next
we
step.
got a big win because that was going to be my next step, is I had to go look for something to finish the process. And I found it in someone that has been in my life for 20 plus years. And it was like the right,
makes perfect sense.
It's just crazy. Like God truly does just, I don't know how to say this in a better way.
He has a plan.
He has a plan, and
We
me
just don't know
fighting
what
it,
it is.
I don't know. I never was like that. I always thought that I could control my destiny, but if my destiny right now is to talk, I'm
crushing it.
I'm all for it. So I made it to Clair. I have toured on some of the biggest. I've been a part of some of the biggest shows. I've gotten to be part of like the U.S. Open and gone to countless cool events. And it was worth it all.
For sure.
It was one of those things where, would I do it again? I would do it the exact same way again, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's zero regret in me making a fool of myself sometimes, being an asshat some days, being the greatest and also being the worst. And I've made enemies and I've made friends and I've made, you know, all the things down the line while touring. But right now it's made me who I am. And I think that I've learned so much through touring and meeting different people and seeing the world. And it's brought me obviously to you, which was awesome. And it's now time to, you know, say goodbye. It was fun. It was c'est la vie.
On to the next chapter.
It was, and that's exactly what it is. And that's how I look at it. So people, you know, sometimes the question arises like, do you miss it? It's like, of course I do. I miss the people. I miss all those interactions I talked. I miss being the mayor some days. Yeah. You know, there's only so many times I can shake my cat's hand before they're like, all right, dude, just leave me alone. So yeah, I miss it, but this is my new passion. And it's not because I have this super big passion for podcasting. It's just because I have a passion for being here now. And that's what I think the answer is. If someone was to ever ask again, they just give them these 4 podcasts to listen to, and they'll get the answer.
I love it. Well, we love having you here.
And I love being here. And as we wrap this up, I could go on for hours about touring. That's not the point, though. The point was, look, it's hard. It's all hard. It's super hard. But if you don't do something you love, and if you end up at the end of the day creating something, if you try to create something out of yourself that you're not, it'll eventually bite you. Yeah. And I think that that's what touring led me to, is I started to realize I was becoming someone that I didn't want to be. I was, again, living that, going right back to old ways, or it's funny. Cycles are real things. Breaking cycles are hard. And so, but I'm going to read this one last thing that I read this morning, actually. And we're going to wrap it up. But I thought this was a really cool quote from Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
I'll try not to mess up. I read it earlier, and I don't know if this is the exact quote from Jim Carrey, because I feel like it's written a little.
Gotcha.
But it goes, my father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant when I was 12 years old. he was let go from that safe job, and our family had to do whatever we could to survive. This is where it gets cool. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
I love that. 100%. Got to take the chance.
So there's the moral to this.
Good words to live by.
4-part series that you all made it through. And if you're at this part of the story, I owe you a beer. I owe you a couple Bevvies. You just come find me one day.
Yes. Thanks for sticking it out with us.
Thank you so
Great
much
story.
to our sponsor, BetterHelp. They are awesome. Thank you to Level Up Roofing. If you're in Houston, hit them up. They not only do roofs, they also do
they do renovations. They're flipping houses.
Flipping houses. And then our friends down in Inked Vanity Clothing.
Yeah.
They've been really sweet to us. So here's a little shout out to them. But thank you all so very much. It has been a pleasure sharing this small part of my life. There's still so many more stories. So don't think that this is all the touring stories.
No, there's plenty more to come.
Plenty more to come. Stay tuned next week for some cool episodes. I think Jared, the front of house guy from Florida Georgia Line.
All right. It'll be a great one.
So we're going to call it. Love you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers and bottoms up. I don't think I'm a bottoms up, though.
That's okay.
I still hold on.
Oh, cheers, everybody. See you next time.
Woo.